Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It is Thursday, our themeless Thursday, and we're going to talk about, news. That's why you're here, to listen to us talk about news as we just woke up and have not had our coffee yet. That's the name of the show. Let's go ahead and get into our headlines. I'm like losing what to say in these intros every day. Today on Before Coffee, Londoners face eat or heat Christmas crisis despite lower inflation.
Shipping industry in the dark over U.S.-led Red Sea Navy force, and judge tells Rudy, you gotta pay now.
Inside the world's first reactor that will power Earth, using the same nuclear reaction as the sun.
And in bad reporting news, new Washington Post CEO accused of Murdoch tabloid hacking cover-up, and why people still fall for fake news about climate change.
Sheep's head, anyone? What Europeans are eating this Christmas?
And those stories and more, which is the 83rd birthday of Mr. Frank Zappa. Happy birthday, Frank. December 21st, 2023 on Before Coffee.
Okay, first news story is going to be about Londoners. That's right. A city which has a large homeless population that I have seen when I've been to London many times. There are people who are now at risk of either choosing where they eat food or they heat their homes so that they don't freeze to death. This is from Guiliani Carbonaro on Euronews. Inflation has finally slowed in the UK, with recent data showing an annual rate of 3.9% in November, the lowest in 2 years. While this is good news for a country battered by a cost of living crisis starting in 2022, inflation remains higher than in the European Union, especially in London, which has the highest poverty rate in the UK. People are struggling to put food on the table, for themselves and for their families. Winter can be a magical time in Europe's richest city, but beyond the sparkle and its grim reality of financial difficulties faced by many residents. As Christmas lights brighten up busy shopping streets and excited tourists huddle around the seasonal markets, hundreds of Londoners line up in the city's food banks. 25% of households are struggling to put food on the table, Sarah Calcutt, CEO of food charity City Harvest, tells Euronews. The problem is immense, and it's much worse than last year. We have twice as many people on the waiting list this year than we have had in 12 months. In part, this is because living in the British capital is so expensive. The cost of living has skyrocketed in London last year when inflation reached a staggering 11.1%. That's pretty darn high, exacerbating pre-existing crisis of homelessness and poverty. As in, it didn't help that there's also a lot of homeless people in poverty there, and then they also had an inflation. While most of Europe has since recovered, the situation hasn't improved much in the UK, where inflation was still at 6.7 in September and 4.6 in October. Between November 2021 and November 2023, the overall price of food and non-alcoholic beverages rose around 27%, according to the UK's Office of National Statistics (ONS). In 2022, the number of people experiencing destitution grew to 3.8 million, including 1 million children, 2.5 times more than in 2017. I wonder if this has anything to do with Brexit, just my own curiosity. Though energy bills aren't as monstrous levels they reached in 2022, when the government stepped in to help families pay their bills, many households are still facing the same impossible choice: buy food or heat their homes. A recent survey commissioned by the home heating brand Airgon found that 34% of British households will be cutting back on their food shopping this year so they can afford their energy bills. Nearly 6% are worried about the cost of staying warm this winter, with 1 in 10 households in London spending more than 30% on monthly income on energy bills alone. God, time to get double-paned windows or something. Making matters worse, London has the highest poverty rate in the entire country. Households are considered below UK poverty line if their income is under 60% of the median household income after housing costs for that year. According to Joseph Rowntree Foundation, an NGO focusing on poverty, more than 1 in 4 people in the British capital, 27%, live in poverty. So 27%, food has increased by 27%, and 27% people are also too poor to actually buy that food. Guess that's the lucky number. That's mainly because a majority of Londoners live in rented accommodation, which is expensive in the city. Yes, I follow a YouTuber who's actually American and became a British citizen, and I've been watching his journey of trying to buy a house in London, and let me tell you, it's almost impossible to do. At some point, he was living in Liverpool because it was cheaper to live in Liverpool but he wanted to live in London, but it was cheaper for him to rent a place in Liverpool than to rent a place in London while he waits to buy a house in London. They want people to work there, they want to make money, but they don't want anyone to live there, I guess. The capital also has a bigger Black, Asian, and ethnic minority population than anywhere else in the UK, and these households tend to be poorer than the white ones at 38%. I don't know if that is racism, who knows? Euronews has contacted the London Mayor office for comment, but did not receive a timely response. With food prices rising faster this year than any other since 1970, many in London who are struggling to make ends meet are forced to rely on food banks. Many are working poor, that is, individuals who, despite being employed and receiving a monthly salary, often minimum wage, they still don't earn enough to live properly, says Calcutta of food charity City Harvest, her organization which fights food waste while feeding those in need, also serves meals to nurses and junior doctors in British hospitals, newly qualified teachers in schools, and children whose families can't afford to put a meal on the table every day. As cold weather sets in, higher food costs are expected to leave many in London and the UK struggling to eat and heat their homes at the same time. Warm banks, public spaces with heating, are available across the capital in libraries, community hubs, and learning centers. As Calcutta explains, family savings have been decimated by the combination of COVID-19 pandemic and the cost of living crisis. There are no reserves, there's no extra money, she says. Wages have not gone up in line with the cost of food and the cost of living in any way. And so there isn't enough money in the household to cope. If something goes wrong, that's it. There's no buffer, nothing. So send out your, your hopes and blessings or whatever for everyone in London, who unfortunately I think might be forced with the choice of leaving London so they can actually live somewhere, because London doesn't want anybody to live there. Unless you're a billionaire, billionaire probably. If you're a foreign billionaire, you can live in London. If you're just a British citizen, these are the people who are anti-immigrant, by the way. They want to kick all the immigrants out, but they can't even take care of their own people.
There's just one family that owns most of the land.
Yeah.
There's just one family in England that owns most of the land. I wonder who it could be. They could just donate it if
only that those guys
tomorrow.
could help by, selling their golden crown or something.
Right. Something like that. Maybe get some of that. Sell some of that treasure you looted from other countries. You probably shouldn't sell that either, right? You should give it back. That's no way to get money either. Oh, by the way, all you countries suffering in inflation, here in the United States, we're yipping and yapping and bitching and moaning about less than 3% inflation and the price of gas plummeting to down below $3 a gallon for like the first time in 3 years. So, yeah, we're still complaining about that. The world's lowest gas prices, apparently, as far as I can tell, at least compared to Europe. Way lower. Even Canada, like a third of Canada. Canada's got oil gushing in the streets, and we get lower prices than that. Yeah. All right, so again, our perspective for our American friends, we get it pretty damn easy, and all we do is complain. In a relative term, which everything is relative. Like, we're relatively cold compared to the sun. However, very hot compared to before. All right. In shipping and war news, this is from Reuters, Jonathan Saul. Shipping companies remain in the dark over a new international Navy coalition being assembled by the United States to combat attacks in the Red Sea, with many vessels continuing to avoid the area by canceling contracts, sources said on Wednesday. The sources, who include shipping and maritime security officials, say few practical details are known about the initiative launched on Tuesday by Washington, and whether it will directly engage in the event of further armed attacks at sea. I'm okay until I start talking and I start getting these acid reflux attacks. Iran backed Houthi, I believe that's pronounced Houthi. Let's call it Houthi. Iran-backed Houthi militants in Yemen have since November 19th stepped up attacks on vessels in the Red Sea to show support for Hamas and Israeli military offensive in Gaza continues. Their leader said Wednesday that the group would strike at U.S. warships if it is targeted by Washington. Houthi fighters have fired missiles and launched seaborne assaults on ships from fast boats. Missiles fired have been repelled by U.S. warships. There are still a number of unknowns with the coalition, and we don't know how many warships will be involved, how long will it take, and those vessels to get in the region. Are there rules of engagement, and the actual prosecution scheme will be put in place, said Corey Ranslam, chief executive of British maritime risk advisory and security company Dryad Global. Well, maybe they want it to be kept secret so they don't get ambushed. What did you ever think of that? Globally, this is a fairly small area, however, providing protection to commercial vehicles. Vessels in this region could be a major undertaking, depending on the number of vessels, along with any changes to the Houthi tactics. Container shipping companies in particular have continued to pause their voyages through the Red Sea, using instead a route around Africa that adds to the journey in times and raises costs. That in turn has stoked worries about delays to deliveries and price rises that could trigger a new round of global inflation. Well, it'll trigger only inflation because the rich companies all want to get richer and they want to gouge you for things that shouldn't cost as much. Only because their costs went up and their short-term costs went up, so they're going to pass it on to you immediately. That's inflation. Okay, and legal news. Judges Rudy Giuliani with immediate enforcement. This is from Independent UK. And this is Alex Woodward, pointing to his history as an uncooperative litigant and concerns that he will try to conceal his assets during any appeals. The federal judge has ordered Rudy Giuliani must immediately pay $148 million to the mother-daughter pair of election workers who sued him for defamation. Last week, an 8-member jury found Giuliani owes Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shane Moss $16 million and $16.99 million, respectively, in compensatory damages, in addition to $20 million each for intentional infliction of emotional distress, and a further $75 million in punitive damages. I hope they just give him a baseball bat and just let him go to town on Rudy. I have nothing but contempt for Rudy Giuliani. I mean, I've never liked the guy, ever. I've never liked him. I thought he was an opportunist, always, and a liar,
he
always.
He wasn't a great mayor during 9/11 either, is what I heard.
Was not a great mayor. He was a horrible mayor. He put the frickin' after 1993. The World Trade Center was bombed in 1993, the first time, by a truck bomb in the basement. After that happened, Giuliani was mayor after that happened. He put their emergency response office in the frickin' World Trade Center. And guess what happened to it on 9/11? It was completely destroyed and all the people in it. The emergency response team was gone. Because Rudy Giuliani's a moron. Anyway, so Giuliani's got to pay. He's got to pay now. And it's because right after his verdict, he went out and started running his mouth again. And so these women had to sue him again. Say, hey, let's get the judge to make him shut up. And the judge says, you're going to pay now, Rudy. We don't care if you can afford it. You think Rudy has $148 million? Huh? Court orders work like this. You obey the court order or you go to jail. So this will be entertaining. No way he has $148 million. He'd have to sell his kidneys, and that wouldn't even raise it. Back to you.
He'd have to sell his kidneys.
Looking forward to that too.
His kidneys probably aren't worth that much because he's a pretty old man.
I really despise Rudy. He's just a pile of garbage. He's just like, dude, why are you still around? Does anybody even like you? Really? I mean, it's pitiful.
Does anybody even like you?
Drunk? Seriously. Let's go hang out with Rudy. Let's not. Okay? You know?
Okay.
That's everybody.
Enough Rudy Giuliani rants. Let's go and talk about. I don't give one shit about the guy, and I think that's all he deserves is me to care zero cares in the world about the guy. I don't hate him. I don't like him.
Would
Just
you
nothing.
care?
I feel nothing.
Would you care if Rottweilers are ripping them apart? Would you stop and watch? I think I would.
Inside the world's first reactor that will power the Earth using the same nuclear reaction as the sun. This is from Aisling Ni Shulan, which sounds like it might be French or Irish. So I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. We go behind the scenes. I say we. Aisling went behind the scenes on the world's largest nuclear fusion device, attempting to harness the energy as the sun and stars. Well, that's because all stars are suns. In the heart of Provence, some of the brightest scientific minds on the planet are setting the stage for what is being called the world's largest and most ambitious science experiment. The task at hand is to demonstrate the feasibility of harnessing nuclear fusion, the same reaction powering our sun and stars, at an industrial scale. To do this, the world's largest magnetic confinement chamber, or tokamak, is under construction in the south of France to generate net energy. Okay, so she was French. I believe the person who wrote this article is French, and I apologize for not knowing French. The International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, ITER, project agreement was formally signed in 2006 by the EU, the US, Russia, China, India, and South Korea at the LC Palace in Paris. There are now more than 30 countries collaborating on the effort to build the experimental device, projected to weigh 23,000 tons and withstand temperatures of up to 150 million Celsius when complete. In a way, this is like a national laboratory, more like an international laboratory, a big research institute facility. But it's the convergence of national laboratories, really, of 35 countries, Koblenz, ITER's head of communications, told Euronews Next. Nuclear fusion is a process in which two light atomic nuclei fuse to form a single heavier one, generating a massive release of energy. So instead of fission, which is a separation, fusion is a combination. In the case of the sun, hydrogen atoms as its core are fused together by the sheer amount of gravitational pressure. Meanwhile, here on Earth, two main methods are being explored to generate fusion. The first, you might have heard of at the National Ignition Facility in the US. Koblenz explained, you take a very, very, very tiny bit, the size of a peppercorn, of two forms of hydrogen, deuterium and tritium, and you shoot lasers at them. So you're doing the same thing. You're crushing and pressurization as well as adding heat, and you get an explosion of energy, E equals mc squared. Little Einstein there. A little amount of matter is converted to energy. ITER's project is focused on the second possible route, magnetic confinement fusion. In this case, you have a very large chamber of 800 meters, and we put a very tiny amount of fuel, -2 to 3 grams of fuel of deuterium and tritium, and we get it up to 150 million degrees through various heating systems, Laban says. That is the temperature at which the velocity of these particles is so high that instead of repelling each other with their positive charge, they combine and fuse. So you basically make them so hot that they melt into each other. When they fuse, they give off an alpha particle and they give off a neutron. Okay, so the problem here, right, that I'm seeing with both of these methods is that they require energy to begin, which is true. You cannot just create energy out of nothing. But the first method requires you to basically be able to power a laser so that you can make two things explode, or you need to heat them so much that they melt into each other. In the tokamak,
it's the opposite of fission, which is separating ions.
Yeah.
Ionization. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, the thing is, the big conundrum I've always had, and I'm sure a lot of scientists have who actually study this, is the idea of making energy in an efficient way, right? So you have to use energy to make energy. But right now, like, well, I don't know what it is for nuclear power, but I know for coal energy, it was like 80% of the energy you used to make coal energy was wasted, right? Like 80% of it was just dispersed and gone. So
energy cannot be made or destroyed, only converted. That's
I understand that, but I'm saying the efficiency is very low. So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Even in nuclear
the efficiency of making energy, converting energy into motion.
Yeah. There's always going to be a loss of energy, but the efficiency has always been way too low, right? 20% or something.
What we have potential over here, and we have motion over here, and in between is the conversion process.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
No, I understand how it works. I'm just saying that's been the problem. I'm just curious about the efficiency of this, because they obviously aren't talking about how efficient it is.
Right.
All I hear is that they shoot lasers and they make something incredibly hot. In the tokamaks, the charged particles are confined by
right?
confined by a magnetic field, except the highly energetic neutrons, which escape and hit the wall of the chamber, transfer their heat, and thereby heat water running behind the wall. Theoretically, energy would be harnessed by resulting steam driven by a turbine. I feel like humans are stuck to this one element of energy creation, which is make steam and move a turbine. Kinetic energy is the only thing we can do to make energy. We can't think of anything else.
What we do now,
anything else works. I have no idea. I'm not a scientist.
Element. Right.
Sorry?
Yep. Talking too much. Sorry.
Okay.
I was just saying what we do now is we take an unstable element like plutonium, which we have to create from uranium, and as it loses its neutrons, as it ionizes or whatever, it creates a lot of heat. Mm-hmm. And while it's generating that heat, we bathe it in water, which creates steam, which turns a turbine. So there's your nuclear fission.
Even coal energy.
It's not total, but
even coal energy was based on kinetic energy, like using
everything's potential to produce energy, and we got to harness,
But that's what I'm specifically talking about. I'm specifically talking about how I don't know if it's impossible, but it seems like a lot of ways we're trying to solve the energy crisis is still using kinetic energy, and I just think that's interesting. I'm not complaining about it, but I'm just saying it's very interesting that no matter what we do, what other power source we use, it always ends up being, and then we can make steam and put it through a turbine. Like, that's always the end result. Hey, we made these two atoms 150 million Celsius just so we could heat a turbine.
The only way to create AC power is to turn something, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, that's how it works.
We shouldn't have chosen what was his name? I already forget.
That's what AC power looks like. DC power is just a straight line.
We should have done DC power.
AC
Our lives would be so much easier if we did DC power.
It sounds good that DC power does not travel well. It loses power through transmission lines. So AC power, because it doesn't rely on naked just point A to point B nonsense, it's doing this, right? It has no line loss whatsoever over thousands of miles of cable. DC, not so lucky. That's why we use AC. More scientific knows. I don't know.
Well,
we remember that Einstein, almost dragged Einstein. Edison was electrocuting elephants to prove AC power
That's my
dangerous.
opinion.
Right? He was putting Tesla out of business. Tesla wanted the DC thing, and Edison said, "Oh, AC is." I'm sorry, you said AC.
DC power is going to kill people or whatever.
It was opposite. All right. Yeah. No, I think. I'm sorry. Edison wanted the DC, I believe. I forget. Anyway, see. It's early in the morning. But he was still electrocuting elephants, which is freaking insane.
Elephants of all things.
All right. Yeah, you gotta bury that thing. You can't just leave it out. Why would you something that big? Look how dangerous this is. Okay, you could have executed a mouse and so the same thing,
Nuclear power plants
shock people.
Have been around since the 1950s, exploiting fission reaction, whereby the atom is split into a reactor, releasing a massive amount of energy in the process. Fission has the clear advantage of already being established, tried, and tested method, with over 400 nuclear fission reactors in operation worldwide. But while nuclear disasters have been rare occurrence in history, the catastrophic meltdown of Reactor 4 at Chernobyl in 1986 in April is a potent reminder they are never entirely risk-free. Moreover, fission reactors also have to contend with the safe management of vast amounts of radioactive waste, which is typically buried deep underground in geological repositories with a bunch of signs that say "Do not enter," "Death Skull," and then I'm sure in the future when we're all dead and gone, somebody is going to be like, "I wonder what this means. Is it aliens?" By contrast,
bright
ITER notes
spot.
that the fusion plant of a similar scale would be generating power from a much smaller amount of chemical inputs and just a few grams of hydrogen. The safety effects are not comparable, Koblenz noted. You've only got 2 to 3 grams of material. Moreover, the material is a fusion plant. Deuterium and tritium, and the material coming out, non-radioactive helium and neutrons, are all harnessed. So there is not a leftover, so to speak, and the inventory of radioactive material is extremely tiny. Challenge with fusion, Koblenz stressed, is that these nuclear reactors remain extremely difficult to build. You try to take something up to 150 million degrees, you try to make it to a scale that is needed and so forth, and it's just a difficult thing to do. Certainly, the ITER project has struggled with the complexity of this gargantuan undertaking. The original timeline for the ITER project was set to be 2025, as a date for the first plasma, with full commissioning of the system bookmarked for 2035. But component setbacks and COVID-19 related delays have led to a shifting timeline for the system commission and ballooning budget to match. The initial cost is estimated was at 5 billion euros and now has grown over to 20 billion. Wow, that's a little bit more than they estimated. As far as the international collaborations go, ITER is something of a unicorn in how it has withstood the headwinds of geopolitical tensions between many of the nations engaged in the project. These countries are not obviously always ideologically aligned. If you look at the future flags on the worksite by alphabet, China files next to Europe, Russia files next to the United States, Koblenz noted. For those countries to make a 40-year commitment to work together, there was no certainty. There will never be a certainty that there's not going to be some conflicts. Koblenz put the relative health of the project down to the fact that getting nuclear fusion up and running is common and a generational dream. That's what brings the strength together. It's why it has survived the current sanctions that Europe and others have on Russia and the current situation in Ukraine. Given the scale of the challenge presented by the climate change, it's a little wonder why that scientists are racing to find a carbon-free energy source to power our world. But plentiful fusion energy supply is still a long way off, and even ITER admits that their project represents a long-term answer to energy concerns. In response to the notion that fusion will come too late to help combat the climate crisis in a meaningful way, Koblenz asserts that fusion power could have a role to play further in the future. If we really have a sea level rise to the extent that we start to need energy consumption to move to cities, if we begin to see energy challenges at all that scale, it becomes really obvious that the answer to your question, he said. The longer that we wait for fusion to arrive, the more we need it. So the smart money is get it here as fast as possible. That's right, if you want to solve all of our geopolitical problems, just have everyone work on making fusion energy, and then maybe humanity can finally, center around a common goal. It's actually really heartwarming to see. Whether we'll ever see fusion energy, it is heartwarming to see 35 different countries working together. Not friggin', I'm leaving the project because I don't want to work with a dirty Russian, like how the Cold War was, right? If anybody watched the film Oppenheimer, there's a whole thing happening in Oppenheimer with the Russians, the Germans. We can't tell them that we're making a nuclear bomb because they'll use it against us. Instead of...
Right, it was during a war.
Yeah. So that's our story. On to yours.
Oh, of course, I'm going to blame Star Trek because of the dilithium crystals, the concept that, you can cause fusion, and when you cause this fusion, it forms a crystal, right? So it's totally harnessable in this tiny little crystal, and it's basically a dynamo. A dynamo is that pure energy that you can release it as you need. Yeah, so Star Trek probably came with this idea and said, hey, every scientist started out watching shows like that and stimulating their mind, and it could happen, or we could be just harnessing the energy of the sun and creating a new sun with a massive explosion, and we're all vaporized.
Hey, that's what they thought. Supposedly that's what they thought would happen when they made the nuclear bomb, that they could set the atmosphere on fire and then kill everyone on the planet.
Chain reactions, man. We don't know where they're going to stop.
Basically, I think in the film they said something like it's a almost 0% chance, and then the Matt Damon who plays the general was like, I want it to be 0, and it's like we can't say it's 0, but it's almost 0. Of
course. And bad media news. We have cover-ups, and we have fake news. This first story is from NPR's David Folkenflik. New Washington Post CEO accused Murdoch tabloid of hacking cover-up. When Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos wanted an assured hand to right the newspaper's shaky finances, he turned to Will Lewis, a 54-year-old former editor of the Daily Telegraph and former publisher of the Wall Street Journal, whom he called exceptional and tenacious. Lewis will start as the Post publisher and CEO in early January. A dozen years ago, media magnate Rupert Murdoch also turned to Lewis when he wanted to find someone to rectify the hacking and bribery scandals engulfing the British Sunday tabloid News of the World. Lewis publicly stated charge was to root out newsroom corruption, cooperate with police, and help to settle claims from people targeted in the company's journalists for voicemail and email hacking. The Guardian called him News Corp's cleanup campaigner. A very different picture of Lewis emerges from material presented in London courtrooms in recent months and reviewed by NPR. The man picked to lead the Post, a paper with the slogan "Democracy Dies in Darkness," stands accused of helping lead massive cover-up of criminal activity when he was acting outside public view. In lawsuits against News Corp's British newspaper, lawyers for Prince Harry and movie star Hugh Grant depict Lewis as a leader of frenzied conspiracy to kneecap public officials hostile to multi-billion-dollar business deal and to delete millions of potentially damning emails. In addition, they allege Lewis sought to shield the CEO of News Corp, British arm News UK, from scrutiny and to conceal the extent of the wrongdoing of the News of the World's most profitable sister tabloid, The Sun. In sum, the Duke of Essex and Grant argue that Lewis was a linchpin of efforts to limit the fallout during a key period of between late 2010 and 2012. These concerned about Lewis's action have been percolating for years. Through his spokesperson, Lewis declined to comment to NPR for the story. He previously denied broad outlines of these accusations, saying they're utterly unfounded. Lewis has not personally been sued as part of any of this current litigation, which offers great specificity and sweep to the allegations. So this guy's taken over, in short, he's taken over Washington Post in January, and he has a history of, we're gonna spy on people illegally, hack their phones, and instead of being, he didn't do the hacking, he did the covering up of the hacking, which is just as bad, which is trying to present yourself as fully compliant when you're just hiding more evidence that would make your news organization seem more legitimate, which of course all Rupert Murdoch news organizations are just pushing a point of view, and that's all they're doing. They ignore actual news to push a point of view, and they do it on a daily basis, and that's all they ever do. You watch Fox News, that's all they ever do. Ignore the news to push a narrative all day long. In other horrible news about bad reporting, this is from grist.org. Politics is an independent website. Why people still fall for fake news about climate change. It was the hottest year on Earth in 125,000 years, and hashtag climate scam is taking off. This is from Kate Yoder, staff writer. In 1995, a leading group of scientists convening the United Nations declared that they detected human influence on global temperatures with effectively irreversible consequences. In the coming decades, 99% of scientists would come to agree that burning fossil fuels has disrupted Earth's climate. Yet almost 30 years after that warning, during the hottest year on Earth in 125,000 years, people are still arguing that the science is unreliable, or that the threat is real, but we shouldn't do anything about climate change. Conspiracies are thriving online, according to the report by the Coalition Climate Action Against Disinformation released last month in time for the UN Climate Conference in Dubai. Over the past year, posts with hashtag climate scam have gotten more likes and retweets on the platform known as X than the ones with climate crisis or hashtag climate emergency. By now, anyone looking out the window can see flowers blooming earlier and lakes freezing later. Why, after all this time, do 15% of Americans fall for the lie that global warming isn't happening? And is there anything that can be done to bring them about to reality? New research suggests that understanding why fake news is compelling to people can tell us something about how to defend ourselves against it. People buy into bad information for different reasons, said Andy Norman, an author and philosopher who co-founded the Mental Immunity Project, which aims to protect people from manipulative information. Due to quirks of psychology, people can end up overlooking inconvenient facts when they're confronted with arguments that support their beliefs. The more you rely on useful beliefs that at the expense of true beliefs, the more unhinged your thinking becomes. Another reason people are drawn to conspiracies is that they feel like they're in on a big world transforming secret. Flat earthers think they're seeing past the illusions that the vast majority don't. The annual UN climate summits often coincide with a surge in misleading information on social media. As COP28 ramped up in late November, conspiracy theorists circulated claiming that governments were trying to cause food shortages by seizing land from farmers, supposedly using climate change as an excuse. Spreading lies about global warming like these can further social divisions and undermine public and political support for action to reduce emissions, according to Climate Action Against Information report. It can also lead to harassment. Some 73% of climate scientists who regularly appear on the media have experienced online abuse. Part of the problem is the genuine appeal of fake news. A recent study in Nature Human Behavior found that climate change disinformation was more pervasive than scientific facts. Researchers at the the researchers at the University of Geneva in Switzerland had originally intended to see if they could help people fend off misinformation. Testing different strategies on nearly 7,000 people from 12 countries, including the United States, India, and Nigeria, participants read a paragraph intended to strengthen their mental defenses, reminders of the scientific consensus around climate change, the trustworthiness of scientists, and the moral responsibility to act, for example. Then, they were subjected to a barrage of 20 real tweets that blamed warming on the sun, and the wavy jet stream spouted conspiracies about the climate hoax devised by the UNs and warned that the elites want us to eat bugs. The intervention didn't work as hoped, said Tobias Spampati, an author of a study on neuroscience research at the University of Geneva. The flood of fake news meant to simulate what people encountered in social media echo chambers had a big effect. Reading the tweets about bogus conspiracies lowered people's beliefs that climate change was happening, their support for action to reduce emissions, and their willingness to do something about it personally. Of course, somebody's letting you off the hook. Oh, Big Brother just wants you to do that because he wants to control you. When it's not Big Brother, the Big Brother is the huge corporations that get us in wars. Those are the ones, and guess what they are? They're oil companies. Why would oil companies lie to you? Profits, maybe? Come on, man. The oil companies are lying to you. The climate scientists are trying to warn you, but you're listening to the people who have a profit motive only. And then you're saying, well, the scientists get money too, so they must be lying. That's your normal counter argument to global climate change is the scientists get paid money. That's their argument for most of this. So, yeah, scientists get paid money, unlike the rest of us who get paid in donuts. Anyway, your story.
Yeah, money is only corrupting to smart people, not to everyone else, right? It only corrupts those guys, the ones who go to school for 8 years, 10 years.
They see the world that way.
Yeah.
You're right. It's projection. They see the world that way. They project it on you. Yep. Mm-hmm. Has nothing to do with the way you think at all. So use your own mind. Give your own information. And give people who went to the trouble of going to college and getting a degree and learning how things work and chemistry and stuff, give them a little bit of leeway in what they have to say instead of just, I'm rich and you're hurting my profits. That guy, he ain't on your side. Okay.
All right. In some positive news, you want to hear a list of things that Europeans eat during Christmas dinner? Because some ham and turkey is not that all that's there. There's plenty of other weird stuff people are eating out there. This is from Tim Gallagher on Euronews Culture. Whether you think of Christmas as a celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ or a modern iteration of the winter solstice, there's one thing that we can all agree on. Christmas is a time for indulging. Each country has their own take on Christmas food. The Brits have their turkey, Estonians enjoy duck, and due to an absolutely blinding marketing move, the Japanese have KFC. But what are some of the more unusual Christmas dinners out there? From Stockholm to Stuttgart, each country has its own culinary traditions. Let's take a look at the tasty and tasteless items on the menu at the European Christmas dinner table. From Norway, sheep's head, anyone? A Western Norwegian delicacy originally eaten by poor people during a festive season, smalahove is an innovatively prepared and consumed Scandinavian dish. The smalahove is cooked by first splitting a sheep's head in half and then taking out the brain. After being soaked in water for 2 days, the head is salted and smoked before being steamed. Diners then tuck into their ears and eyes first, both considered the tastiest and most luxurious part, before stripping away meat from the skull. Today, smalahove is enjoyed mostly as a novelty for tourists, with local Norwegians foregoing the pleasure. Can't imagine why. Hey, don't forget your ice spoon. That's the best part. Get your ice spoon out. You've heard of the charcuterie board, and maybe even a butter board, but have you heard of a jewel board? Smorgasbord is a word that entered the English language, but it actually originates in Swedish, as a platter carrying an array of delicious foods. The jewel board is a Christmas re-imaging of this tasty treat, often boasting such Scandinavian delicacies as reindeer sausage, pickled herring, and alongside of assortments of cured meats and cheeses, all placed around a centerpiece of glazed ham. Bûche de Noël, France. The Yule log is a tradition in many countries and dates back to the pagan origins of Christmas, when evergreen branches would be brought into the home to celebrate the days growing longer. From the time when the trees were brought in by peasants in the French countryside, this wooden ceremony has evolved into a dessert in the form of bûche de Noël, a chocolate sponge cake filled with buttercream and wrapped in a marzipan, all made to look like a Yule log. Diabetes if I've ever seen one. Feast of the Seven Fishes, Italy. Italians do it better, just ask the guests at the White Lotus. In its deeply Catholic country, Advent fasting has taken a delicious turn. Traditionally, Advent is a time for self-denial, contemplation, and religious observance. So what better time to serve up a 7-course meal? This southern Italian tradition sees locals tucking in a 7-course meal of up to 10 different fish dishes. The celebration, which takes place on Christmas Eve, has spread to America with the Italian diaspora and is now a transcontinental tradition. I'd love to eat 10 different fish dishes. I love fish. Polish carp. In Poland, as in many European countries, Christmas Eve is the big day with a traditional meal including beetroot soup and sauerkraut. The high point of this meal is the Polish carp, which would have traditionally been fished well in advance of Christmas Eve and kept alive in a large bucket or bathtub until the time comes to kill, scale, and debone them. I guess now they just get them from the grocery market. Just like Southern Italians, Bulgarians have managed to turn a period of fasting into a thematic feast. In this Orthodox country, the 40 days before Christmas are a time of fasting, so naturally Christmas Eve, the biggest day of the festival period, sees a special meal served up. Of course, it's all meat-free to honor the tradition of going without. This tasty meal must be made up of an odd number of dishes and is accompanied by a walnut, which diners crack open to reveal their fortune for the next year. Instead of the Chinese cracker, you've got the Bulgarian walnut. That's so interesting. I never heard of that. Another Norway dish, gingerbread houses. They have a negative witch-related connotation for the rest of the year, but at Christmas time, they're a charming treat for the whole family. Since the 1990s, the coastal city of Bergen, Norway, has been playing with gingerbread competitions and now hosts the world's largest gingerbread village every year. This may not technically be something everybody eats, but the attraction is certainly very pretty to look at. So there is your list of odd things that people are eating on Christmas. I kind of really want to try this Italian 10 fish course meal. Sounds really interesting, especially...
What do you eat?
Sorry?
What are you having? Sorry.
Oh, I have no idea. It's always a surprise for me.
Oh, okay. Lutefisk. That's what you're having.
I don't know. We're probably going to eat food. On to this day in history.
Food. Okay, it sounds good.
Yeah.
Food sounds interesting. Have to try that sometime. Okay, this day in history. In 1804, Benjamin Disraeli. British statesman and novelist who was twice Prime Minister of UK, was born on this day. In 1845, the Battle of Feroz Shah began between British and Sikh forces during the First Sikh War. In 1864, on this day, General William Tecumseh Sherman captured Savannah, Georgia during his March to the Sea in the American Civil War. In 1911, American professional baseball catcher Josh Gibson, one of the game's most prodigious home run hitters, known as the Black Babe Ruth, was born. 1913, the New York World published the first modern crossword puzzle. So crossword puzzles have only been around for like 110 years today as a thing that gets published, I guess. 1937, the classic animated movie Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs premiered, establishing Walt Disney as one of the world's most innovative and creative movie makers. Of course, there were no color movies back then, so that being in color made a big difference. 1945, the U.S. General George Patton, known as Old Blood and Guts by his men, died following an automobile accident in Germany. Excuse me again. In Germany. In 1958, on this day, Charles de Gaulle was elected president of the French Fifth Republic. In 1968, on this day, Apollo 8 was launched from Cape Canaveral and eventually completed 10 lunar orbits. In 1988, on this day, Pan Am Flight 103 exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland because of a terrorist bombing. In 2003, the government of Libya accepted responsibility for the explosion and in 2004 agreed to compensate the families of the victims. That's kind of remarkable that they accept the responsibility. Well, here's a video we could have played, right? I don't know if you wanted to, but 2012, the music video for South Korean singer PSY's humorous pop song Gangnam Style became the first video on YouTube to garner 1 billion views, so 11 years ago today. In 2017, American astronaut Bruce McCandless II, the first person to conduct a untethered, free flight in space, died at the age of 80. What is our featured event? Our featured event is radium discovered by Marie and Pierre Curie. On this day in 1898, having recently discovered polonium, future Nobel Prize winners Marie and Pierre Curie discovered the radioactive chemical element radium, a slivery white metal that would be used to treat cancer and famously give people cancer.
Yeah, and
because
make you lose your
it was
jaw
radioactive.
because we made paint out of it because paint glue in the dark.
That's right. Yeah, famously there was a bunch of like young girls who died or were working at a place that painted those faces.
Yeah.
That glowed in the dark, and they all died of cancer. Their hair and teeth started falling out, which is not normal. I don't understand. Your hair and teeth start falling out, and you're like, whatever.
These are just working girls, so they don't deserve respect.
Yeah, we're just making money. Yeah, it had nothing to do with this job I'm working at. I'm totally fatigued all the time. Also, Florence Griffith Joyner birthday today. Tragically died September 21st, 1998, at the age of 38. Famous triathlete, American athlete. Well, very fast. December 21st, 1959 was her first birthday. Also born today, 1926, Joe Paterno, American football coach. 1937, Jane Fonda was born this day. 1940, Frank Zappa, the great Frank Zappa. Don't you go where the Huskies go, and don't you eat that yellow snow. Frank Zappa, born today, 1940. Ray Romano, everybody loves Raymond, was born in 1957. I don't know if that's true. And Kiefer Sutherland was born on this day in 1966. And what day is it today? It is National Regifting Day, Thursday before Christmas. So the stuff you got last year you didn't use, put it in a box, give it to somebody else you barely know. Crossword Puzzle Day is today. So we already talked about that being the first crossword puzzle published in 1913. Humbug Day, which is the day, Ebenezer Scrooge famously said Humbug Day. I'm not sure why we have Humbug Day, but we do. And it's also National Homeless Persons Remembrance Day. Of course, if you're homeless, you don't have to remember. You know you're homeless. like by the minute. Oh yeah, I'm homeless. I got to keep remembering that. Phileas Fogg win a wager
to remember
day.
that there's homeless people out there.
What's that?
I think it's for everyone else to remember that there's homeless people out there.
I know. I was making a joke.
Okay.
Because it's ironic that we just think of homeless people as just like down in their luck losers when a lot of them have jobs.
Yeah.
Phileas Fogg win a wager day, which is the guy who went around the world in 80 days in a work of fiction. Winter solstice, of course, is today, and it can fall any time between December 20th and 23rd, according to science. And precisely, I looked it up, winter solstice is at 10:37 Eastern time today. So approximately 10:27, sorry. So approximately 15 hours from now is winter solstice. So the Earth is going to stop. And you're going to be like, wow, what happened? No, I don't think you'll feel it. It's also Anne and Samantha Day, which commemorates Anne Frank and Samantha. I'd look up Samantha. Two girls that died young. Samantha Smith, who's a daughter of an instructor of college literature who wrote a letter to Yuri Andropov, and she died in a plane crash in one of her flights back from Russia. So we're commemorating these young girls that died too soon. Not sure why we're doing it on December 21st, but there you are. National French Fried Shrimp Day. So if you need some fried shrimp, you need to get somebody French to make it for you. I guess that's what that means. No, I'm just kidding. It's French fried, deep fried, in other words. Actually, this is more of a tempura type thing here. They got batter on it. National Flashlight Day. So go get that flashlight before it gets dark. You're going to need it. National Main Day is today. And that's all the days there is today. And I'm sorry for wasting all your time on that. That's all for Roger today. And Solstice, December 21st, 2023. Before coffee, back to you.
All right, this has been Allison here on the rainy and windy Dutch day here. Oh, I forgot to transition. And we will see you tomorrow for our Friday news dump. I have no idea if we're filming on Christmas.
Probably.
Well, it's Monday, so. See you. I guess we'll see you on Christmas. So I guess we'll wear our Santa hats. I don't have a Santa hat, but.
Maybe call me late or something. Call me half hour later. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll call you whenever I call you, I guess. And we will see you tomorrow for Friday.
Like last time. All right.
Here is your mic drop moment.
Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.